Have you been trying to reach Master Ball tier but keep getting stuck? Maybe you spent your last VP on a Megastone that just isn't cutting it on ladder and now you don't know what to do. Well, you're in luck, because in today's video, we're going to be talking about reaching Master Ball without requiring the purchase of a single Megastone. I should know, they're exactly what I used on my way to Master Ball. I'm Zane, aka Direwolf. Let's dive in. One of the biggest pain points that I've heard about Pokemon Champions is the VP system. That the very currency required to buy Megastones is the same currency required to buy other held items and even recruit Pokemon. Each of these resources is competing for your attention and you don't even know where to focus first. Well, I'm gonna remove that guesswork entirely. There are 4 Megastones that you are simply given the moment you recruit the Pokemon that uses them, whether that's from Kit's Ranch or Pokemon Home. And those Pokemon are Greninja, Delphox, Chestnut, and Eternal Flower Floette. Once you recruit them, you're given the Megastone free to use, no VP required, and you're off to the races. And the first team that we're going to be talking about doesn't even require you to purchase a single item. It's going to use only the items available from the beginning of the game, including using a Pokemon that doesn't hold an item at all. So let's talk about Greninja. And the first Pokemon on the Greninja team that we need to talk about is obviously Sinistcha. Well, any Pokemon is only as good as its trainer and its teammates. Even a level 100 Mewtwo will go down to a level 1 Rattata in the right circumstances. And this is even more prevalent in doubles battles. The exact format of competitive Pokemon and the ladder that we're going to be focusing on climbing with. You see, Sinistcha is such a great supporter in this format, so we might as well start there, because this is the Pokemon that if you can, you need to be recruiting out of Kit's Ranch and just have it permanently available for you in Pokemon Champions. So let's give this little teacup the spotlight that it deserves, because its ability Hospitality actually defines all of the HP spreads that we're going to be using on every Pokemon. Speaking of Sinistcha's ability, let's start there. Whenever Sinistcha switches into battle, it recovers its allies' health, the Pokemon sitting next to it, by 1/4 of its max HP. That bonus 25% HP makes even frail Pokemon like Greninja deceptively bulky. It allows it to stay on the field longer, fire off more attacks, and pick up KOs that it had no business getting. Sinistcha's ability Hospitality takes the ally Pokemon's health, divides it by 4, and then rounds down to figure out the exact amount of health that it's going to recover every time it switches into battle. So when we are building our spreads for Sinistcha's partners, we want to make sure that they are exactly 1/4, so that when we are recovering that HP, we're getting the most percentage of HP and able to allocate those additional stat points to either be faster, bulkier, or hit harder. Notably, Hospitality only heals the ally Pokemon, not Sinistcha itself, but it doesn't really need to. Sinistcha has enough longevity and recovery ability that it's fine all on its own. Our little teacup has plenty of staying power, and we're going to help that out by giving it a citrus berry, so whenever its health dips below half, it's going to recover 1/4 of its HP again. So even though Sinistcha isn't healing itself with Hospitality, we are going to spec it so that its health is exactly divisible by 1/4, so that it gets the most out of citrus berry. Plus, its signature move Matcha Gotcha restores its health by half of the damage that it does to your opponent. Oh, and this move hits both of your opponents, doubling the amount of damage and doubling the amount of effective health that Sinistcha can recover. And did I mention it also has a chance to burn both of your opponents? This little teacup is going to absolutely wreak havoc for your opponents if they let it. But Sinistcha doesn't just stick around and be a nuisance. It also supports our Pokemon specifically by causing redirection. Our opponent now has to get through Sinistcha, thanks to its access to Rage Powder, before it can damage any of our ally Pokemon. So Sinistcha is recovering our allies' health, protecting them from damage, and chipping away at our opponent while potentially burning any of their physical attackers like Garchomp and Excadrill, making our life that much easier to get through the rest of the team, and making your opponent's life that much more difficult. Just a friendly reminder that grass type Pokemon are immune to all powder type moves such as Sleep Powder and notably Rage Powder. So just keep that in mind when you're trying to redirect grass type moves away from our Greninja, but we've got a few more answers to that, so hold on. The last thing of note on Sinistcha is that it often runs Strength Sap to help improve its longevity, but we've opted for Trick Room, and that might feel out of place on a Greninja team specifically because it's trying to go fast, but I promise it has its place. And so with that teaser out of the way, let's get to everyone's favorite Teenage Mutant Ninja Frog. Remember when I said to be careful around grass types with our Greninja because Sinistcha can't redirect those attacks? Well, that's actually a feature, not a bug of this team. Let me explain. As anyone who has ever picked up a Pokemon game can tell you, water types are strong into fire types are strong into grass types, and grass types are strong into water types. So obviously, our Mega Water type Pokemon is going to be really good into, say it with me class, grass types. Very good. That'll be on the test, so remember that. Our Greninja is obviously running Water Shuriken, Greninja's signature move, and it wouldn't be a Greninja team without it. This gives us strong priority water type damage. They can also knock out Pokemon, notably Aerodactyl and Excadrill, through their Focus Sash. But it's also running Blizzard and Gunk Shot to handle those pesky grass types that we were just talking about. And thanks to its ability Protean, it can turn into the type of the first move that it uses. So it can fire off a Gunk Shot and now become a poison type and resist those pesky fairy and grass types that it was once afraid of while dealing super effective damage back to them, or use a Blizzard and become the fastest and hardest hitting ice type in the format while gaining the defense boost while in snow when it's paired next to a Lowland Ninetales. In a best of one closed team sheet format like the Pokemon Champions Ladder is, this hidden and frankly misdirected information is what gives you an upper hand when you're competing against other players. Just when your opponent thinks they know what's coming, you counter their counter with a counter of your own. This 5D chess of Pokemon will melt your brain if you let it, so please just remember to always have fun. Some key things to note about this Greninja spread is that it's faster than Sneasler before the Unburden boost, allowing you to turn into a poison type with your Gunk Shot to resist both Dire Claw and close combat, or just knock it out with a Blizzard if its sash is already broken. This set also picks up the knockout with most Mega Floette with a single Gunk Shot, and always survive Light of Ruin or a +1 Moonblast after you've turned into the poison type if you're unlucky enough to have missed your Gunk Shot. Lastly, like I mentioned earlier, Water Shuriken is a priority move and is able to knock out Aerodactyl and Excadrill through their Focus Sash, and you only need 3 hits of Water Shuriken to knock out an Aerodactyl in the rain. We talked a lot about weather here, but we're going to get to that in a second. First, we need to talk about our other counter to grass types, Talonflame. This is probably one of the most straightforward sets in the entire video. We have a team of 3 water types, so our opponent is always bringing their grass type. So what better answer to that than a Pokemon that gets priority flying moves? Thanks to Talonflame's ability Gale Wings, whenever its health is full, all of its flying moves have +1 priority. That means it can deal damage with big attacks like Brave Bird or set up Tailwind before your opponent has a chance to move. And this is really key in something like a Venusaur, who's going to be one of the faster things in the format if your opponent has speed control. Seems like a pretty good thing to pair with Sinister's Recovery. Huh. This also explains Talonflame's intentional lacking of an item. You see, Talonflame only has a base 81 attack, which is pretty bad. Our physical attacking Basculegion's special attack is 80, just to frame how low Talonflame's attack stat is. It really does just go fast, and so to help compensate for its poor attack stat, we have to use stronger flying type moves. We could use Brave Bird, but the recoil on Brave Bird is going to break through our Gale Wings, giving us only 1 opportunity for a priority flying move. Instead, if we run Acrobatics, we just lose 10 points of base power damage, dropping it from a 120 flying move to a 110 flying move without the recoil damage, and we still get to maintain that priority for multiple turns in a row, allowing us to pick up quick knockouts on something like a Sneasler who doesn't have a Focus Sash, and then be able to set up Tailwind the following turn. So those White Herb Sneaslers that are everywhere, gone. Covert Cloak Whimsicott, gone. Venusaur in the sun, I hope you're wearing a Focus Sash, because otherwise, gone. We're also running Flare Blitz for maximum damage into steel types, because this team outside of Talonflame is really going to struggle into those steel types, but we've got one more trick up our sleeve for that coming later, so hold on. And before we get there, I hear what you're saying. Zane, water has 2 weaknesses, grass and electric. You can't just throw a 4th electric type weakness on here expecting to cover for it. And you're right. And that's because there are really only 2 electric type Pokemon running around in this format, and they're both Rotom, except in the Easy Bake Oven and the Mr. Clean forms. And we've got answers to both of those. The problem in a format with electric types that have Levitate is that ground types like Garchomp and Excadrill aren't really the answer. Sure, you're immune to the electric type damage, but then what? Especially if your name's Excadrill and you get one shot by both Rotom Wash and Rotom Heat, some electric type counter you are. That means we need to get creative with our electric type solutions. And that's where Ninetales and Basculegion come in. Both of these Pokemon are strong, meta-relevant picks in their own right with plenty of time in the VGC sunlight, but on this team, they're really just focused on picking up a couple of surprise knockouts on our opponent to clear the way for the rest of the team. Rotom Heat, despite being the electric type counter to water, is going to really struggle into this team of 3 water types. Sure, the combination of priority water shurikens from Mega Greninja, as well as devastating wave crashes from Basculegion, is going to make your opponent think twice before bringing their air fryer out of the cabinet. Instead, our biggest worry really is Rotom Wash. Not only can it dish out strong electric type moves, but it's going to resist all of of the water and ice type moves that we've got on the team? Well, all but one. And this is where we run Freeze Dry on our Alolan Ninetales. In addition to just spamming Blizzard and hoping for freezes, as well as setting up Aurora Veil to make our Pokemon even more bulky, this clever fox gets to deal super effective damage to water types thanks to Freeze Dry, allowing us to make quick work of our opponent's Rotom Wash just when they thought it was safe. Basculegion, on the other hand, can also make quick work of Rotom Wash if you're down to a 1v1, as its last respects will always pick up at maximum damage. Even if you're down just one Pokemon, Basculegion is able to cleanly pick up all Rotom sets in just 2 hits. And when supported by Sinistcha, who resists both of Rotom's attacks and able to fire back super effective damage in the process, you're in a really good spot to handle both Rotom forms and pave the way for the rest of the team. And once all of those pesky grass and electric types have been dealt with, there's one final member of the team who is going to thrive in those conditions. It's not the fastest Pokemon, it's not the hardest hitting Pokemon, but the Pokemon that this entire team has been quietly and diligently working to protect this whole time. The real reason that we built coverage for every single grass and electric type Pokemon on the ladder, it was never for Greninja. It was for the face of pain and misery for every opponent who has seen it on ladder. Politoed! I'll be honest, when I was first working on this Greninja team, this slot was supposed to be Pelipper. It's the premier rain setter of the format, it's great into grass types, gets access to Tailwind, and has access to Wide Guard to stop all of the Rock Slide users that you see running around. But it just felt off. So I thought to myself, what does this team do well, and what does it still need help doing? Greninja is notoriously horrible in doubles. Fast, frail Pokemon never seem to do very well if they aren't packing a punch, and most of them are incredibly predictable. But if our Greninja is primarily an ice type, that is unpredictable and helps us get at least 1 or maybe even 2 knockouts early. But that's a trick that we can really only use once before our opponent brings in a Kingambit, which was once resisted by Greninja and is now looking like a pretty juicy win condition for our opponent. And that's where this team really struggled. Early knockouts, apply constant pressure, but then not really be able to seal the deal in the end. But there's one strategy in all of Pokemon that loves and thrives by having a Pokemon advantage. It can turn unwinnable situations against walls that you could never hope to break through into guaranteed wins. All thanks to one song and one song only. And I don't mean that song that you try and impress your friends with at karaoke night. I'm talking about Perish Song. And this is why we have been so focused on removing our opponent's grass and electric type Pokemon, because they're Politoed's only weakness. Once Politoed lets that song rip and you have a 3-2 Pokemon advantage, that's game. You simply double protect, switch one Pokemon out, and then on the following turn, protect again. That's it. And then you have just won the game in the most ridiculous way possible. It turns this Greninja team into something that feels actually pretty viable. I would not expect this to do well in a best of 3 or open team sheets kind of format, because it really thrives with the surprise advantage that Greninja gives by being able to eliminate what your opponent thought was an answer into it. And that quick advantage in Pokemon is what makes Perish Song so powerful, which is why in the in-game ladder, this works. Politoed has access to Weather Ball, which allows it to do some pretty significant damage regardless of which weather you're playing in, and Helping Hand, all while being the ultimate win condition for a team that is very good at getting ahead early and struggling to close in the end. But for this strategy to work, Politoed has to be able to tank enough hits to get Perish Song off and survive until the end of the game, which is why it pairs so well with Sinistcha, who can both recover Politoed's health and critically resists all of the attacks that Politoed is weak to. And Politoed setting the rain removes Sinistcha's fire weakness, making it even harder for our opponents to get through. And those steel types that we struggle to deal with, well, Politoed resists steel type moves. And outside of our Chaladon's Electro Shot, which we can just take away thanks to Ninetales, there isn't a steel type in the game capable of breaking through Politoed in time. Even a max attack, Black Glasses, Kowtow Cleave from Kingambit has a 50% chance of one-shotting Politoed if it crits. You may not be able to take out steel types, but they can't take you out either. And remember that Trick Room that I mentioned on Sinistcha? Well, Perish Song makes all of the Pokemon on the field faint in their speed turn order. Politoed, being one of the slowest Pokemon in the format, means that it always faints last. So if every Pokemon on the field is going to faint at the same time, you still win. But in the event that your opponent has a even slower Pokemon than Politoed, you can reverse that turn order with Trick Room, and ensuring that you have the slowest Pokemon on the field when that Perish count drops to 0 and you win the game. And so that move that felt really out of place on a speedy team pairs beautifully with Perish Song as that final critical win condition. Common leads for this team are almost always always Greninja next to either Basket Legion or Talonflame, but you can lead Ninetales if your opponent doesn't show any signs of weather control, allowing you to just fire off 2 blizzards straight out of the gate, giving you just under a 35% chance of freezing something on your opponent's side of the field and practically winning the game on turn 1. Politoed should almost always be lurking in the back as that final Perish Song win condition, and Sinistra is almost always never one of your leads so that you can capitalize on that hospitality boost, keeping Greninja alive to seal up those key knockouts later in the game. This team is a blast, and I hope you have as much fun playing it as I did. I want to emphasize that these might not be the best possible teams, but that's not the point, and it never was. The point is, you can choose a Pokemon that you enjoy playing with, dare I say your favorite, and just think through their strengths and weaknesses like we did in this video, and come out on the other side with a team that's well-rounded and capable of taking you all the way to Master Ball. You really don't need to use the same Pokemon as everyone else, you just need to have a plan. If you want to see how I played with these teams on my climb up to Master Ball, you can check out the playlist of my live streams here, or you can check out this video that YouTube's convinced you'll like. Either way, I'll see you there.